Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well. Since we won't be meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, January 22nd, what I wanted to go ahead and do was to do a video to make up for that and go over the remaining fallacies and explain how to get to quiz one and what kind of stuff it's going to be on. So, on the left of your screen should be Blackboard. These are all my classes, and we're going to click on Introduction to Formal Logic because that's us. That'll bring this up, and then what you're going to do is go to course content, and under course content will be all of the sway presentations that I used in class so far. So we'll have the stuff on the laws of logic are all there. This is under the sways on logic that you'll see on your screen. So there's some other stuff there that'll come in handy later on the semester, but we're going to go to the sways on logic, of which there are three. There's the one that's on the laws of logic, the law of identity, the law of non-contradiction, the law of excluded middle. Then there's the stuff on arguments, which is about the difference between deduction, induction, abduction. It's got the definitions of validity and soundness, and also some examples of valid and sound arguments. And then we've got the third one, which is the informal fallacies of logic. So if we click on that one, because that's where we were, it'll bring up the sway. And we were a little further down. So if you go about, I'm going to say about 3/4 of the way down the page, we had finished argumentum excellentio. And so I'm going to start talking about argumentum ad misericordiam. That's where I am again. We're about 3/4 of the way down. So argumentum ad misericordiam, literally that means the appeal to misery or appeal to pity. And this is where one attempts to support a conclusion by evoking pity or trying to make the person listening feel bad for the person talking. And so the example I have here is, if I don't make an A in this class, I won't graduate and I won't be able to find a good job. So I deserve an A in this class. Well, maybe you do, but you don't deserve an A simply for trying to make me feel bad about it. Now, that's the example I have here, but if you've ever met someone that's emotionally manipulative, this is exactly the fallacy that they're doing. So if you've ever known someone, significant other, family member, who's ever said something like, "If you love me, then you'll do this thing," all right, or that hurts me when you don't do that, and they're just trying to get you to do something merely because if you don't do this, it'll make me feel bad. That's an argumentum ad misericordiam, and it's an informal fallacy. Then after that, we've got two here that are related. They're kind of the inverses of each other. First, we have the fallacy of composition. Fallacy of composition is where you say what's true of a part must also be true of the whole as well. And that doesn't work. It works sometimes, but again, what makes an argument invalid is that it might not be true. The conclusion might not follow. It might, but it also might not, and that's the problem. So sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. Here's the fallacy, or the example of the fallacy that I have here. Premise one: atoms, okay, little components, are not visible to the naked eye. You can't see atoms in themselves. You can't see the little electrons orbiting around protons and neutrons. We just don't see it. Premise one: that's true. Premise two: people are composed of atoms. Scientists tell us. Okay, those two things, they sound true, they work. The conclusion then, well, since people are made of atoms and atoms are not visible to the naked eye, then people are not visible to the naked eye. That doesn't work. We can see people even in spite of them being composed of atoms. So this is the fallacy of composition, again, saying that what's true of the part must also be true of the whole. And that, again, that doesn't follow necessarily. Similarly, we have the inverse of that, the fallacy of division. This is where you say what's true of the whole must also be true of the parts as well, and that doesn't always work either. So the example I have here is premise one: the city of Aiken, South Carolina has several golf courses and horse tracks. All you got to do is drive 5 minutes and you'll find a golf course or a horse track in the city of Aiken. Premise two: let's say we have a fictional person here. Let's say they're real. Abby is a citizen of Aiken, South Carolina. Someone lives in Aiken. So, Abby must play golf and ride horses. Maybe she does, but simply because something's true of the whole. Aiken's known for its golf courses and for its its horse equestrian activities. But just because that's true of the city of Aiken, you'll see horses everywhere, and someone lives in Aiken, that doesn't mean that they necessarily play golf or ride horses. Maybe they do, but also maybe they don't, and that's why that ends up being an invalid inference. Okay, and this ends up being an informal fallacy of logic. Slippery slope. This is where someone says that if something happens, then that'll make something else eventually happen, and that later thing that's going to occur is undesirable, so we got to stop the first thing from happening, all right, or else this other thing will happen. So this is an argument I've actually seen said before. So people have said this. You can find it very easily, unfortunately. The argument goes like this. If homosexuality is normalized, then bestiality, having sex with animals, will eventually become normalized and legalized as well. So therefore, we need to stop homosexuality from being normalized, because otherwise bestiality will end up being normalized. Now, the problem here, the problem with the slippery slope argument, is that it doesn't show any necessary connection between the one thing happening and the next thing happening. It just says, if this thing happens, this other thing will happen, without showing how you get there. That's the problem of the slippery slope fallacy, and that's why this is an example of a fallacious slippery slope argument. Then we've got this one, post hoc ergo propter hoc, which is literally Latin for after here, therefore unto here, or after this, therefore because of this. And that's where you assume that one thing happens, and then another thing happens. The first thing that happened must cause the second thing to happen necessarily. And this is ridiculous. Sometimes in the humanities, this is referred to by the expression correlation does not equal causation. So here, premise one, the number of pirates in the world. Now, when I say pirates here, I'm referring to, really think of the most stereotypical version of a pirate you can think of. Eye patch, parrot on the shoulder, maybe a wooden leg, hook. The number of pirates in the world, okay, has decreased over the past 4 centuries. There are still pirates, but not those kind of pirates. The number of pirates has decreased over the last 4 centuries. Premise one. Premise two, recorded temperatures over the globe have increased over the last 4 centuries. Okay, that's true as well. So someone says, the number of pirates went down, temperatures went up. So, conclusion, pirates cool the earth. If we want to stop rising temperatures, what we're going to have to do is bring pirates back. No. Right? And then finally, the last one I have here, fallacies, informal fallacies that I want you to know, is the no true Scotsman fallacy. And that's because the original context of this fallacy involved what a true Scotsman is. But what this is this is an ad hoc. An ad hoc is just an expression that means like completely out of the blue or out of nowhere. It's just a completely manufactured attempt to retain an unreasoned assertion. Like you just stick to a definition that you made up. So here's how that works. Here's a conversation that I have here about the musical legacy of Michael Jackson. So 2 people are talking, Elijah and Brianna. Elijah says, "Are you a fan of Michael Jackson's music?" And Brianna says, "Oh, definitely. I love Thriller." All right. Elijah says, "Oh, really? If you're such a fan, then name every song on the album Thriller." To which Brianna replies, "Well, let's see. There's Thriller, there's Pretty Young Thing, there's Billie Jean, there's Bad." But no, Bad isn't even on that album. It's on the album Bad. Brianna says, "Well, that's all I can think of." And so Elijah concludes, therefore, since this person cannot enumerate every single track on the album Thriller, well, you're not a real fan then. And she protests, "But I am." And Elijah again asserts, no, a real Michael Jackson fan would have been able to list every track on that album in order. So what's the fallacy here? Well, Elijah has a definition of what he supposes a Michael Jackson fan will do. According to whom? Well, according to him. He's kind of made up a definition of what a Michael Jackson fan is. We see this happen. The 2 domains where I see this fallacy happen a lot are sports. Okay, sports fans. You're not a real fan unless this. You're not a real fan of a particular team unless you've been to every game. You're not a real fan unless you can name every player on the team. You're not a real fan unless you own everybody's jersey or something like that. Politics too. Okay. Oh, you're not a real Democrat unless you believe these positions. You're not a real Republican unless you maintain these positions. But you're not really appealing to a party platform or something specific. You're just saying, well, based on my view, in my opinion, you don't fit the criteria that I'm making up as I go along, and that's what it is. It's the making up as it goes along, saying you're not this because of my definition. Okay, and that's the problem with that particular fallacy, and it's called no true Scotsman because the original example that was made up was no true Scotsman puts sugar on their porridge. And to which someone says, "Hey, I got an uncle. He's Scottish. He puts sugar on his porridge." Ah, but no true Scotsman puts sugar on their porridge, and that's the way that's the original example of that fallacy. All right, so that concludes the fallacies that I wanted to wrap up. And so, just to review, the stuff for quiz 1, if we go back to Blackboard, which will be on your left, we've got the laws of logic here, this stuff, okay, the law of identity, the law of, if we go down a little bit, we got the law of identity. Mine's not loading. There we go. The law of identity, the law of non-contradiction, and the law of excluded middle. Again, the simplest ways I can put those in the stuff I want you to know. The law of identity, a thing is the same as itself. Law of non-contradiction, a thing cannot both be and not be at the same time and in the same sense. And then the law of excluded middle, either a proposition, a statement is true, or its negation is true. That's 33% of the content for quiz 1. Another 33% is this stuff that we did here with the fallacies. And what I simply want you to be able to do with the fallacies is recognize the examples. So, and you can, while you're doing this quiz, you can even have these things open while you do it because the quiz will be online. So just keep these like 3 tabs that I have up here open. Just keep those open and you should be fine on quiz 1. Really, it's a matter of just being able to index what's there. So an example of a question for quiz 1 that would come from the stuff that you have on the left side of your screen is, all right, I give you this argument here. A feather is light. What is light cannot be dark. Therefore, a feather cannot be dark. Is that, so an example of a quiz 1 question would be, is that A, equivocation? Is it B, argumentum ad misericordiam? Is it C, the fallacy of composition? Is it D, the fallacy of division? Which is it? Well, according to this, it's equivocation. So I'm not going to ask you to look at new examples and identify what fallacy is there. The only thing that I want you to be able to do is recognize these examples that are in here and which fallacy they fit with. That's all I want you to be able to do with that. Again, with laws of logic, we already went over that. With the stuff on arguments here, I want you to know the differences between deduction, induction, and abduction. What kinds of things are not statements. What makes a statement valid, invalid, sound, what those definitions are, and recognizing, this is an example of a valid argument, this is an example of an invalid argument, just recognizing the examples. Okay, once you do all that, your first assignment from there is to go back here to Blackboard, and again, this stuff's under course content. If you go to assignments, I'm going to click that here, and you'll see there's a folder there labeled quizzes. If you click on quizzes, there's only one thing right there, and it's quiz 1, laws of logic, arguments and fallacies. Now, once you click on this, you'll notice what it says here. This you've got 60 minutes to do this once you've started. You don't need to start it until, well, I'll just say this. It is due Tuesday the 28th, so a week from today as of recording this video, January 28th, 2020 at midnight. So get it done before then. You've got an hour to do it. It's 10 multiple choice questions. It will not take you an hour. But you've got, once you start it, get ready to finish it. And it's, like I said, 10 multiple choice questions that come from the material that I just reviewed in here. There's no fill in the blanks. There's fill in the blanks insofar as they're multiple choice questions, but 10 multiple choice questions that come from the material that I just reviewed here. So that's what your assignment is. And again, that's due Tuesday, January I just lost train of thought. Tuesday, January 28th at midnight. It's when it's due. So that's midnight on the 28th going into the 29th, not midnight on the 28th coming from the 27th. So have it done by end of day Tuesday. Again, 10 questions for which you have an hour. It'll probably take you no longer than 10 minutes, I would estimate, but you've got that time. That will be the only quiz that we do like this. We'll have other take-home quizzes, but this will be the only one that you'll have to do in a Blackboard application like this. Now, since we won't be meeting tomorrow as well, let me say I will actually be in my office during the early part of the day. So I'll be there tomorrow from about 8 a.m. to noon, roughly, maybe a little bit before noon. So about 8 a.m. to let's say 11:30, I'll be committed to being in my office. And if you have any questions, you can come by and see me. My office is Humanities and Social Sciences Building 206B. It's literally adjacent to our classroom. You can come see me there in the morning. If you have any other questions, you can email me at thomas, THOMASB, @usca.edu. I'm available that way. So any questions, please don't hesitate to either drop by tomorrow morning or to email me. Further, when we resume next Monday, that's the 27th, I'll start getting into the more formal logic stuff. So what I'll be lecturing on that day is material that will be it'll be more formal logic, but that's when Quiz 2 stuff starts on the 27th. And that's what I'll be doing also on the 29th. So we'll be doing Quiz 2 material, and Quiz 2 will not be a thing. That will be an in-class quiz that we'll be doing probably sometime in early February. I doubt it will be the very first week of February, but that's it's possible. I think the Quiz 2 would be at the earliest February 5th that we do that. So again, any questions, please do contact me. I'm sorry about not being there tomorrow. I've got a commitment in the afternoon, but like I said, I will be there in the morning if you'd like to meet. All right, everybody, have a good rest of your, as of the recording of this video, a good rest of your Tuesday evening, and have a good Wednesday as well. Bye-bye, everybody. See you Monday the 27th.